Hi, everyone out there in Creeptastic land. Thanks for joining us. And we're just meeting here tonight with Doug Brode. He is an author. He just had a book that just got out on Amazon to purchase called The Ship, and it is about alien abduction type things. We'll talk a little more about that. And he also is a illustrator that's done storyboard creation and other kinds of art things for films over the years, and also had a TV show at one time called Forbidden Science that was on Cinemax, I believe. And now it's also available on Amazon Prime. So lots of stuff to talk about. And if you guys here have any questions throughout, feel free to just butt in and ask. I'm fine with that. And then if anybody else that's watching live wants to come into the Zoom, you can get in at any time and join us and talk to Doug also. So welcome, Doug. Thanks for taking the time to do this with us. And
sure, happy to be here.
Yeah. So we were just chatting before this a little bit about where you grew up. You were saying Chicago. Did you have like, when you were a kid, were you really into movies and science fiction stuff back then, or comic books, any of that kind of thing?
Oh, sure. I was originally going to be a comic book artist. And
oh,
then,
really?
I saw Coppola's Dracula. That would have been like 92 or something. Mm-hmm. And I decided to switch over into film because I didn't know if I really wanted to draw men in tights for the rest of my life. And I really noticed the art of film in that. And so I learned about storyboarding, and I came out to LA, and I got a job as a runner for Joel Silver, he was doing The Matrix while I was working for him. And it's funny because I remember reading The Matrix script, getting about 3 pages in and having no idea what was going on. Like I did not understand it at all. And I would post drawings up on the wall all the time, and they kept threatening to fire me. And I was like, well, dude, I'm making $400 a week. So yeah, either way. And the director of House on a Hill, which was a horror movie in like 98 or something, was walking by on a cell. He's like, I need a storyboardist, right? I'll take this guy. And after that, I did Planet of the Apes and some other things. And Van Helsing was probably the one that really kind of launched me a bit more, but yeah.
So did you actually go to college or school for illustration then in Chicago?
Yeah, I went to 2 years of art school at Joe Kubert, which is a comic book school. And I transferred over to college, and I went to Columbia in Chicago. And I went there for 4 years.
Okay. So did you ever think you were gonna like kind of hit it big in that arena? Or were you just like, when you went to California, that's gotta be kind of a scary thing to make that move?
I remember being like genuinely terrified when I moved to LA.
Like, am I gonna wait on tables forever?
Yeah, I had no contacts. I didn't know anybody. You know, the one advantage that a storyboard artist has over somebody like an actor or a novelist or a screenwriter is that you can tell in 30 seconds flat whether or not this person is somebody that you'd want to hire, because you just look at the drawings and either they're good or they're bad, and that's it. The big thing though that I learned along the way is, you know, my very first job, the director's name was Bill Malone. It's House on a Hill. And he said to me, I was really struggling on my first couple of days. And he said, you know, only 10% only 20% of storyboards has anything to do with drawing. The problem was he didn't tell me what the other 80% was. So it took me a long time to figure out what he was talking about. He was talking about understanding camera, understanding what a camera can and cannot do. He was talking about blocking out a scene. He was talking about all the elements that go into storyboards that really has nothing to do with drawing.
So that's interesting to me, because I'm wondering like the process of it. So are you like in the very beginning stages of making a movie then? Like you're coming up with
what's called pre-production.
Angles? Like you're coming up with like kind of how the scene's gonna look.
Yes. So I work with the director and we figure out the scenes. And sometimes, hopefully there's a script. I've worked on some big movies that people have heard of that absolutely did not have a script. And they would have me drawing from an outline, which is crazy. But then most of the time there's a script. You sit down with the director. We kind of talk about what he's thinking, this and that. and then I go home and draw. And then most times directors then react to whatever you drew and then be like, oh, let's move the camera in this way, or oh, that's a good idea, but let's do it this way, or that's awful, let's do it this way. So you have different directors. You have some like Ryan Johnson, who knows exactly every single frame he wants in a film. I worked with him on Looper. He's best known now for The Last Jedi, but he's done a lot of stuff. And when I worked with him, he knew every single shot. That's a rarity. Usually the directors, they have a basic concept. They'll throw out some ideas, and then you'll go home, you'll draw it up, and then they'll react to it, and then they'll change it from there. That's about 80% of my jobs are like that.
So you really have to, do you have to spend a lot of time before you start actually drawing, just thinking it through, thinking how it's going to look
you don't
in
have
your
that kind
head?
of time. No, I'm
you don't
cranking
even
out
have.
5 panels an hour. So there's not that much time. I mean, because you also, you're throwing out ideas, and some will stick and some won't. So you can't look at them like every drawing is precious, because no drawing is precious. You're just banging them out, and some will stick and some won't.
And then do they usually have a cast already at that point? Probably not.
Yeah, sometimes they'll have cast.
do?
Sometimes I've had jobs where they'll cast the people after I've storyboard, and then they'll actually have me go back and change some of the drawings. That's a big thing to do that, though, because if we're like 1,000 drawings in and they suddenly want me to change the lead actor, that just gave me another 5 months worth of work. So that's pretty rare. Usually they'll have the basic. Usually you have the principles in place before you get into pre-production, because to get the money to get into place, like I did Men in Black, and I remember doing the international one, the newest one. And I remember Chris Hemsworth, the Thor guy, was, they were talking to him. So they first had me do presentation boards, which are like pretty boards that they were using as part of their presentation to woo him into the project. And then the next Monday, they were like, okay, well, we've got him. Even though it wasn't announced in the trades, I knew that we had him. So I would factor that into my drawings, and I didn't have to worry about making it look like Chris Hemsworth, but you don't want it to look like a 40-year-old black man if it's a 25-year-old white man or something, So you have to know the basics,
I wondered about that when I saw your storyboard for Harry Potter, because it really did look a lot like the actor in Harry Potter. So I didn't know if they found someone that kind of happened to look like the one in your picture, or if you were drawing Dan.
Well, the drawings I did for Harry Potter were for the third one, but those weren't for the film. Those were for, here's a crazy idea of how Hollywood works. So Warner Brothers, what was it called? Consumer Products hired me for, God, must have been like 6 months or something, to re-storyboard the whole movie and turn like every 5 panels into one shot, so that they could then distribute those storyboards to all of the thousands of artists and people that were making merchandise for it, because they couldn't distribute the film storyboards. So they literally had me re-storyboard the whole film. That's the only time I ever did that. That was crazy. And I also did book illustrations. I have no idea what happened to them. They paid a lot of money on that. That was probably more per drawing than I ever made in any other job. Because they were like these woodcut illustrations, and I would turn them in every Friday, and they were paying like, I don't remember, like $800 a drawing. And so I would turn them in on Friday and turn in like 10, because I didn't want to realize that I was actually banging them out in like 10 minutes a piece. So per drawing, that was the best gig I ever had. I would sit at home all week, and then like the Thursday before, I'd be like, okay, let me do these. So those were for the book illustrations, and I don't know what happened to those, but I did a lot of work on Harry Potter. I did like 7 or 8 months, probably. I'm guessing. I don't know, maybe 6 months. It was longer. And then I was supposed to do the coloring book, but I didn't like the rate that they were offering. It was just too much work. So I turned that one down. And then I also worked on the Goblet of Fire DVD, which was the next movie from a different company. Like they saw that I worked on Harry Potter, so they brought me back out of that. But Harry Potter is the only time on all of my credits that I that's not part of production. Everything else is production. Thor, Iron Man, Star Trek, all that stuff.
So what are basically the storyboards used for? I mean, you're talking about like using them to entice certain actors into coming in, or kind of giving the story.
Well, those are for presentation boards.
But
the
but
basic
otherwise,
term
who's all looking at them, or what are they?
It's a comic book for the
for?
crew and the cast, so that everybody understands exactly what the scene looks like. Because here's a scene everybody knows. So you have Jurassic Park, which I did not work. But you have Jurassic Park. You have what was his name? Gold. Oh boy, I'm blanking on the actor's name. But you have the Jeep with the
Jeff
actors in it.
Goldberg.
You have the dinosaur. Right. You have the dinosaur chasing them on frame left. The Jeep is on frame right. And you're figuring out, well, is the camera mounted on top of the Jeep, or is the Jeep coming towards us? And where in relationship to the Jeep is the dinosaur? So you have to draw all that stuff out like a quick comic book, so that everybody from the actors to the stunt people, to the people shooting the car, to the people creating the dinosaur, and even the people who are creating that jungle set around them, all know what that shot is going to look like in the final film.
Right.
So you pre-draw the whole movie out on big visual effects movies long before you shoot it. Nothing's left to chance. It's rare that you go in there and be like, oh, let's wing it.
Is it in the form of like on a computer then for them to look at, or what?
Well, it is now. Now they're everything I just draw.
Back then it was like in a book or something.
Yeah, they just print it on a book, and it's 3 or 4 panels per page. And yeah, so yeah, it's just like a comic book that's given to the whole crew. And it's not really a comic book. It's a filmmaking comic book. Like there's lots of camera direction in there,
right?
And lots of visual effects notes in there and things like that. So,
do you get to
like
keep
the most
it
recent one I just did was it? What?
Do you get to keep the book at the end of the movie then? I'm sure you
well,
have.
Now because it's digital, I do. But back in the day, I didn't. Like
they didn't let you.
Nobody. Well, no, they would take it. They would totally take it. Like I have a bunch of original stuff from a lot of big movies that they just didn't take away. But there were lots of movies where they totally took the originals. I think Van Helsing took all the originals. That was all hand drawn. But when I got to Maze Runner, which would have been 8 years ago or something, that was when I switched over to digital. And the great thing about that is, since there's technically no originals, I have them just as much as they do, you know. Mm-hmm. And now everything is done over Zoom and everything. I mean, I did the last 2 or 3 movies all over Zoom.
Yeah, I love the Maze Runner. That must have been.
I've never seen it. Is it good?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, cool. Yeah.
I can't believe you've never seen movies that you worked on.
Oh no! In fact, my storyboards are on the DVD. Somebody gave me a copy because they found my storyboards on the DVD. But no, I've never. So I have the DVD somewhere, but no, I've never watched it. I haven't watched Looper either. I worked on that. I have a bunch of movies I've worked on that I haven't seen. Because when you draw it, it's kind of like I like my version, you know.
Yeah.
So you know, also you live with it for so long, you know, on some of these projects, you're with it for 5 or 6 months. You really don't need to go watch the movie.
The ones that you have seen, do they come out looking a lot like you had put it in the storyboards, or do sometimes you know, sometimes they have to stick pretty close. Sometimes they don't. But you know, usually they stick pretty close. I mean, it's not like I've ever seen a movie where it'd be like, this scene looks completely different than we drew it, because they wouldn't do that. There's too many other factors. It's a whole domino effect if you start changing those shots, because there are the previs people, which are the special effects guys, they're already starting to figure this stuff out even before they've shot it. So some of that stuff, once it's kind of drawn and those frames are approved, they kind of go out into the world. They get marked as approved and sent out to all the department heads, and then they stick pretty close to it. Did you learn the storyboard thing in college, or was that something you learned once you got out to California?
Oh no, I learned on the job. I definitely learned on the job. And, I was lucky. I got into the union really young. I got into the what was originally called I'm in the Art Directors Guild now, but I was originally in the Illustrators Union. I got in when I was 27 or something on my very first big job, which was Helsing on Hill. And I definitely learned as I was going. And, you know, I learned a lot from that. I did prop illustration on Planet of the Apes for Tim Burton. And there was a guy who's a storyboard artist whose name is very easy to remember, Michael Jackson. I remember talking to him and learning quite a bit. And then on my next job, whatever the next job was, I definitely knew more about what I was doing. But I learned as I was going. So.
Very cool. So do you get to meet all the actors in it and stuff? Are you there on set when they start doing the filming and all that?
I try to avoid the set at all costs. The set is a very stressful, long days. I avoid the sets at all costs. Now, if storyboarding is continuing on day 1, let alone day 5 or 6, of shooting, they're in some trouble. I've only had that happen on 2 or 3 films. Generally speaking, the storyboards are done long before they're getting in front of the camera. If they are storyboarding when they're in front of the camera, that makes my life difficult too, because the director has very little time for storyboard. So basically I'm meeting them at lunchtime, but lunchtime could be 2 o'clock in the morning, So no, I avoid the sets at all costs.
I was hoping you had some good juicy gossip on some certain actors or something you wanted to share.
I mean, I meet some of the actors, but no, they're it's funny when you meet some of these people in life, it doesn't walk in the door and you're like, wow, so I've had actors walk by me or they'll be in the room with me or whatever. And I honestly won't even know who they are. And they'll be like right in front of me and I'll know them, but I won't, they're just normal people. Like you don't think about it. I get more impressed by the directors. I met Spielberg when I was a young man and that was very impressive.
Wow.
The only time my whole life I ever totally geeked out and I couldn't talk, this is really embarrassing, was Hayden Christensen. It was right before episode 3 came out. I was a big Star Wars nerd. My daughter's name is Leia. My son's middle name is Lucas. So
his first name is Hayden, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, but that's not.
Oh, that's not because of him, huh? Okay. I thought for sure it was when I saw that.
Yeah, no, it's not. But it is funny because the only time, and I've met like a lot of big people, the only time I was ever could not talk was Hayden Christensen. And the poor guy was trying because I got him to sign my episode 2 poster or whatever. And we were in a meeting and the director had introduced us and said, yeah, he's a big Star Wars fan. And he did try talking to me because he would look in drawings and go, oh, did you do that and this? And I'd be like, uh-huh. I could not talk. It was the only time. And the funny thing is, like, I don't want to see some of the people I've met, but I've met the people like everybody knows, and I had no problem at all. Hayden Christensen totally shut down, couldn't talk to him.
My son is a Star Wars fanatic, so he would have been doing the same thing probably. I think I don't know how many times he's watched every one. He can just quote the movie throughout the entire movie, pretty much every one of them. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, they're not special to me as much anymore. Like they don't have quite the impact on me as much. I think once they started making a lot more, there was something about the idea that Lucas made 6 and it was like, okay, that's it. When they kept going, and it's not that I didn't like some of the other ones, but it just, they became movies, you know?
So when you worked on Star Trek, that was with J.J. Abrams, right?
It was.
That was one of his earlier films? That was one of his earlier?
No, that was it. He only made one other movie at the time. I think he made Mission Impossible 3, maybe some other Mission Impossible movie. And he was more known for Lost and stuff when I worked with him. Or maybe that's all I knew, but that was of all the films I've worked on, Iron Man was great too. And I liked some of the others, but I would say Star Trek was my favorite of all the movies I worked on, as far as the final product goes.
And what was he like to work with? Just
he was
nice
really
guy,
open to ideas. Well, he's really open to ideas. And actually the very first time I met him, so what happens is when you're doing prop illustration, they bring in somebody and they have you do you'll work for like a week. And the director will come in on a Friday and he will take a look at a whole wall of stuff or whatever you've got, and you're not in the room. And then they will decide if the director approved anything. If they approved you, well, great, you're in. And if not, then they'll get somebody else. And the guy who hired me on this had also worked with me on Planet of the Apes. And I don't think I know Iron Man was after that. I can't remember when Iron Man was. But so he brought me in and I did some drawings for the Romulan weapons. I made them very different. I made them really organic and stuff. Because we were re-visualizing the whole series. So I really kind of went out there. And I hadn't read the script. I didn't really know anything. I just went with some new directions. And so I'm sitting outside the office and he and like 30 people just kind of going into the prop office to look at the art. And they're having a talk in there and my fate's being decided. And nobody knows my name. It's just, they're just deciding on whether or not they like the art. And then I get called in and a bunch of stuff had stickers that had been approved. I'm like, whew, okay, good. But then about halfway through the conversation, I never talked to any of these people. All the producers are there. All these people are there. I'm just like the little artist guy in the corner. They're talking about this bar scene where Kirk is going to be spending money and this and that. And I raise my gun in the middle of this meeting, and everybody turns like, who is this guy? And I said, well, actually, JJ, there's no money in Star Trek. And he's like, wait, what? And I said, well, according to Gene Roddenberry, he didn't have money in the Star Trek and this and that. I mean, and I said, it's fine if you want to add it. I'm just letting you know there's no money. And my boss is turning green. Like, he's like, can't believe I'm saying this. And JJ stands there for a minute. He looks over at his assistant. He goes, is that true? And he goes, yeah, actually, I think it is. Next thing you know, is taken out of the script. The money for the money, all that was cut out of the movie. And so he was open to ideas from anybody, because he wasn't a Star Trek guy. So he was like, hey, if you've got a good idea, let me hear it, this and that. So yeah, I got along with him quite well. He was a nice enough guy.
Did you ever get to
Directors have to be. Directors have to get you to rally around them. They're not like George C. Scott and Patton. They're not like, do this, do that. Like they want you to love them so that you want to work better for them. So the best directors are very personal.
Did you ever get to meet William Shatner or anybody from?
I met Leonard Nimoy.
Oh, did you?
Who was exactly like Spock. Like I and that's not a complete compliment, because he was, it's hard to explain. Like there wasn't a lot of emotion there. Like he walked up to my desk, and my boss at the time, Russell, was saying, oh, this guy's a big Star Trek fan, maybe say hi to Doug. And I shook his hand. He goes, oh, hello. And but my boss had told him that the big influence in my life had been Star Trek, and it wasn't totally Star Wars. And I had Star Wars books all over the table. And he said, oh, well, what about Star Trek, made you become an artist? And I'm like really struggling to lie to Leonard Nimoy, and I couldn't say to him, well, actually, I'm more of a Star Wars guy. I couldn't say that because I didn't like Star Trek. So, and then I told him that my mom had a big crush on him. I don't know why I told him that. Sometimes you just say things and you look back and you're like, there's 5 minutes I want back. But he was nice. He was very analytical, so yeah. But he was a nice enough guy. I did meet William Shatner once, very nice guy, but it wasn't on that movie, and it was just in passing. But, I'm more of a Shatner guy. I'm a big Shatner.
I saw one of your pictures on, I think, the website. You are signing something at Comic-Con or something. Have you been to a lot of Comic-Cons?
HBO sent me out for Forbidden Science. They gave us this cool booth with all these cloning chambers and everything, and like they really did it up. And that was a lot of fun. Yeah, I was surprised all the autographs I did during that. I mean, I must have done, I don't know, I did a lot. And I had done a few. I got sent out for Comic-Con for Planet of the Apes, and that was the LA Comic-Con. I might have been sent out for Van Helsing. I can't remember, but I definitely, for that one, for my own show, they sent me and one of the lead actresses out to New York, and we did the New York Comic-Con, and that was really cool. And the big thing I remember from that was meeting Lou Ferrigno, who would not give me an autograph because we weren't at the Comic-Con. We were at the airport. I remember thinking, really? He's like, yeah, no, my manager won't let me. I'm like, oh God, like that's just, you get to a place in your life where somebody asks for your autograph, unless you're like in the bathroom or something. You just give them the autograph.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So now that you bring it up, we can talk about your Forbidden Science TV show for a little bit here. That was a trashy show. This was quite a while ago, like 10 years ago.
Yeah, that came out in 2009. Cinemax added a lot more sex than there was originally envisioned. It was definitely supposed to be a sexy show. I think the original title was Kinky Science, which was my title. So it was supposed to have a fun, sexy edge to it. But they put a lot more in there than I had ever expected, to the point where I actually have edited versions downstairs for myself. But it was the most fun I ever had professionally in my life.
Really?
So yeah. I remember the first day of being on set and seeing them. They were shooting a mailbox, with the character's name on it, and then it panned over to the house, and it was this dream sequence. And I never had a moment like that really before or even after in my life where you're seeing something that you had in your head,
right?
like being shot and being made. That was the most fun I ever had in my whole life. Yeah, as far as like career goes.
That whole thing was that was your creation. You came up with the story, you wrote it out and everything.
I wrote, I think 11 out of 13 episodes. I think I'm credited with 12 out of 13, but one of them I want nothing to do with because I was just rewriting somebody else. So,
were you like doing other things too, like directing or producing or any of those things?
No, no, writing it was enough. It was, I only had a few months to write the whole series. So what I did was I had written a pilot in around Christmas time, 2007. And then when I was working on Star Trek in March, maybe of 2008, I got a call that HBO was interested in doing it for their Cinemax channel. And a buddy of mine, John Quinn, was going to executive produce it. And he called me up and said, hey, we got the deal. We're going to make this happen. And I remember standing on the Paramount lot, like right outside where they were shooting or they were about to shoot the bridge scenes for Star Trek, just thinking like, wow, I'm on the Paramount lot. I just got my first show, and like, this is incredible. And then the reality of, oh wait, I have to actually go home and write all these scripts came into it. So what I did was I wrote, instead of going to episode 2, I went to 6 and 7, which was a 2-parter in the middle, and that gave me my heart of the series. And then I did the last 2, which gave me my end. And then I was able to do all the episodes in between that kind of connected it all. So I kind of learned as I was going.
You didn't have the whole thing in your head kind of at the beginning before you started going through all those? Or no?
I had the idea of this company that like did cloning technology and like a lot of like I had this idea of doing like a sexy Frankenstein kind of thing, and a little X-Files vibe to it, and just made it kind of fun. And I like playing with tropes. I do that with my new book too. Like I like taking a trope and then just kind of trying to flip it a little bit. That was a much younger writer trying his first attempt at doing that, so.
Was it kind of a cult thing, like show? I mean, was there pretty big following?
It did. I mean, I know that, I still hear now and then like, oh, it's being aired in, I don't know, wherever, Mexico. And I know it was in Korea a few years ago and Japan. And so sometimes I'll just get an email from the producer, Bill Burke, and be like, because John Quinn's no longer with us, unfortunately. Bill Burke will be like, oh yeah, no, our show just debuted in so-and-so. And, so, in fact, they just put it on Amazon Prime in February. So I did my first interview for that show in 10 or 11 years. So I did an interview with Horror Net or something like that. And it was a good interview. I was happy I did it. But so yeah, and it was a good springboard because I knew at the time my book was just about finished. So I knew that, hey, this is a good time to maybe get a little bit more back into the public eye so that I can, try to, shill my new book.
Right. Was that series just 1 year, or how long?
It was 1 year, and it was pity because it ended on a cliffhanger, and we knew what we were going to do with the second season. But it's odd that one of the things that I heard, I don't know if it's true or not, but that their female audience was bigger than their male audience, which I found really interesting. I think there's this concept that women don't like any erotic entertainment, and that obviously that proved wrong. The problem was that not enough men were watching it. You know what happened with that show was they couldn't decide what it was supposed to be. I'm writing like sci-fi scripts, and they're adding a lot of TNA, and there's nothing wrong with some TNA in there, but there's a point where you add too much and it goes too long. And then the people that are interested in science fiction are you're losing them with that
Turned
much
off
TNA,
by that, yeah.
and vice versa. The TNA guys are like, okay, there's way too much talking in science fiction going on. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And but maybe I wouldn't change. I would never change that experience for anything, because sometimes you look at things that you create and it's a warts and all kind of quality, and you learn so much from it. You have so many great experiences from it.
Mhm.
Originally, my name was not actually going to be on it. It was originally going to be a Doug Miller script. I got really concerned with all the nudity they were putting in. And I was working for Alexander Payne, actually on, what is the thing about where they turn really shrink? The movie didn't come out for another 12 years or something, but I worked on the early version, downsized, in a very early version of that. And he said, no, he said, you write to create a show, you put your name on it. He goes, I don't care what's in it, you put your name on it. And so I did. And that was some of the best advice I ever got. And many years later, as a help for that favor, Alexander Payne had a friend's son or whatever who wanted to be an artist. And I tutored him for a few months, and now he's working over at Simpsons. So,
Oh, nice.
yeah. So, it's nice when things kind of come around. Like,
You don't think you'll ever go back to it to do another season or anything like that, though? You won't, huh?
No.
Then
I mean,
done.
you can't go back. You can't go back to who you were at that time either.
Yeah.
I mean, I write very different now. I have very different interests. Well, my interests are pretty much the same, but I write different now, and I don't really have an interest in TV and stuff like that. It's interesting because I did actually just get an email yesterday from a producer who I guess somehow already read my book. I don't know how he read it that fast. He said he saw a write-up on IO9 about it, and he read it, and he couldn't put it down, and he was talking to me about maybe wanting to option it. And I thought that was really ironic because I wrote the book specifically to kind of move away from the film industry.
Yeah.
And then 5 days after it released, the producers, and he was like a legitimate producer. I looked him up, and my manager knew who he was and everything. So I thought that was kind of interesting. We'll see if anything happens with that.
You're to get
They're always
dragged
trying to
right
make
back
those
in.
deals with. Well, they're always trying to make those deals with streaming because the streaming is a beast and they need a lot of stuff. And something like The Ship would work well on like an Amazon Prime or Netflix because it's contained basically within a crashed UFO or the town around it. So.
You had sent me the script to look through. I didn't get to read all of it, but I did kind of page through here and there and kind of glance over some parts. It kind of reminded me a little bit in the way of some of those. I don't know. There's a lot of movies that are in, I guess, in that maybe creepy vibe or sci-fi vibe where it's like kind of smaller town, and there's like like there's kids with their parents kind of relationships, and there's like I saw there was like a sheriff guy and the kid riding his
that's
bike.
in the flashback scene. There's a 2-chapter thing where there's a flashback that is from the town's perspective. Those are really the only 2 chapters about the town.
Oh, okay.
There is a 2-chapter flashback because they get to the town and there's nobody there. And then there's one child left, or there's 2 kids left. And then they tell their story of what happened before the military arrived. And so there's a 2-chapter thing that takes place there. The book's not really about the town, but I did it's 4 parts. And so what I wanted to do with the first part, I wanted to throw in all the tropes here. I wanted the green light coming through the door with the abduction. I wanted the flying saucer. Or actually, you don't see the flying saucer in the wood, but you're hearing about a ship. You got the military team coming in. You have the town with the missing people. I wanted all of the 80s and 90s tropes set up in the first 100 pages so that when I get to part 2, I can flip it on everybody and be like, oh, actually, this is not going where you think it's going to go. And then in part 3, really flip it and be like, oh, I did not see that coming at all. So, it's definitely, it's one of those things where you set them up in a nice, comfortable, okay, I'm getting an X-Files kind of story. I'm getting a Stephen King kind of thing. And then this is not at all what you think it's going to be. And you flip it about halfway through.
How long have you been working on this book, or how long did you have the story in mind?
I had the idea back in 2010, and originally my pitch, because it was going to be a movie, was Die Hard in a crashed UFO. Some people were interested, but I didn't, I don't know, it didn't connect with me for some reason. I couldn't tell why. And so I optioned a few other scripts along the way. And then I kind of gave up writing. I got married, I had kids, storyboards pays the bills well. So I just stuck with storyboards. And then in 2019, I decided, I'm going to take this and make this into a novel. So I took a class at UCLA at nighttime to learn how to take the skills that I knew as a screenwriter into making it into a book. And I wrote a 120-page version of it that had a beginning, middle, and end. and then it went into a drawer. And then in 2020, COVID hit. So film industry shut down for the first time like ever. And my wife was like, well, you're not doing anything. When don't you finish that book? So I spent all of 2020 writing the book. And then I spent all of 2021 editing that book. Because it turns out editing is a beast. I went through 4 different editors. So, you know, the editing is a whole thing. So that took a lot longer than I expected. But yeah, so it was about 2.5 years, but there's gaps in there. So it's really probably all, you know, less than 2 years all in.
Did you design the cover for, like on your
I
poster
did
there
a
and everything
design
too?
sketch. Do I actually have the, I don't know where the design sketch is, but yeah, no, I did design the cover, and I actually drew out the sketch for the cover. Do I have it here? Before I wrote page 1. I don't have it, unfortunately. But yeah, it's here somewhere. But yeah, I did. I designed it because the teacher that we had at the time was like, well, visualize what this book would look like. So write a review for yourself. And, you know, a lot of stuff that I found a little more touchy-feely and stuff. But the cover thing made sense to me because I'm an artist. So I did sketch up, and it basically was that. It was a little bit different. The text was actually in the middle and the ship was down more. And the trees were more prominently growing through the ship. Because in the book, that's a big part of it, is that this ship, it's almost look as if like God created this landscape and put a ship in there as if it's already been there. But when we started designing it, it didn't make any sense to a viewer. So we toned it down. So there are some trees coming out, but we toned down all the trees going in and out of it, just so it made more sense to the viewer. But yeah, no, I had the cover in mind before I wrote page 1.
This just came out like a few days ago,
On
right?
Friday. It came out Friday, yeah.
And they can only get hardcover right now. They can't get.
Oh no.
Oh.
You can get everything. Oh no. Get the ebook. It's only $4.99.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, you can get the ebook. You can get the paperback.
Oh, you can do
the
paperback
hardcover.
already. Okay. I thought
Oh yeah,
paperbacks
here's the
usually didn't come
paperback.
out
Let me
until
do a little shilling. Paperback,
nice.
hardcover, very pretty,
Nice.
pretty.
I'm gonna
And
order me
ghostly
one of
guys
those.
on the back.
Oh,
So, yeah,
I gotta order me one of those signed ones that are on Amazon.
No, the signed ones aren't on Amazon. Those are on Aliens.
They're on your
AlienSkyPublishing.com.
publishing. So
Which
now
sold much better than I ever expected. I did not expect a lot of people to buy the signed ones because they're more expensive. So I have to get them shipped to me and then ship them out. So I figured, well, I'll sell, a few. So I got a box full, and all but one of them went away in like less than a week. So I didn't keep going back to the post office. And the woman's probably wondering why I keep sending out the same book.
So is that publishing company your company now? Something you just formed?
Yeah, I created Alien Sky Publishing. I had a very specific goal in mind because I put a lot of money towards making this a quality product. So my goal is to lose money on the first book. I'll break even on the second book, and then hopefully I make a profit by the third. And it's a trilogy. And then the idea is that I use that trilogy to launch my publishing company, and then hopefully bring in some other writers too. People who have an interest in 80s, 90s kind of, X-Files science fiction like The Thing and Aliens, because nobody's publishing stuff like that anymore. It's very like everybody's got a message to sell. Like they'll look at like something like maybe the Israeli conflict over there, and they'll be like, oh, I could turn that into a science fiction story. I'm not looking for that when I read a book. I'm just entertain me. Give me a monster in the dark and give me an interesting plot and give me a big twist ending, and I'm good. So,
There's actually in our group, there's quite a few people that have either authored books, or I think there's one that is owns a publishing company, or she works for a publishing company. I can't remember. And quite a few. We had a story slam a while back that anybody could join, and we had everybody come on and read their short stories, creepy short stories, which was fun. And they were really
cool. How long are those stories?
I mean, probably not. What do you think, Julie? You were in on that. They were.
Mine was about 2 written pages, maybe.
Yeah, they were pretty short.
Oh, so really short. Like you have to really.
Yeah. And I did one too, which was like the first time. I don't know. I mean, when I was a kid, maybe I would write stuff here and there, but I hadn't written anything in a long time. So that was pretty fun. We had quite a few people, and yeah, that was a good time. And they were, I mean, we like turned all the lights off and we were reading in the Zoom meeting in the dark, like make it super creepy. So yeah. it was a good
I
time.
would jump in on that. That sounds like fun. That sounds like a good challenge. It's like,
Yeah.
how quick can you set a mood? Because in 2 pages,
Yeah.
wow, you got very little time.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like a fun challenge.
Yeah, we do want to have some more of those because that was a fun time. Let's see, what else do we want to talk about? I had written a few notes here, just got to look over. Oh, I was just thinking in your Forbidden Science, looking at some of the stills from it. That girl, the Penny, is it Sterling? Penny
Serling, yeah.
Yeah, she reminded me of that character Abby in NCIS. You know who I'm talking about?
I think, was that around before? I think our show might have been before NCIS. I don't know when NCIS.
Your show was before, but that Abby, I thought, well, I wonder if they got her look like from your show, kind of, because just her look was a lot similar.
That
to
was a big fight for the hair. Originally,
Yeah.
she was supposed to have lots more pink in her hair, and there was so much back and forth with HBO about that hair. Oh my gosh! So finally, the executive producer and I, we just kind of we found a middle ground that we thought they wouldn't freak out too much, and then we just started shooting. So at that point, they were kind of like, okay, well, we're locked into it now. But yeah, no, originally she was to have all pink hair. I drew her out. I mean, she was the one character in that show where I did it. And I think actually there's that interview on HorrorNet or whatever. It shows my original concept sketch for her. And she came out exactly the way I sketched her out. And she was the most important piece of casting for me.
Mhm.
Her and one male character. I didn't have a big voice on most of the casting, but there were 2 specific characters that I definitely made my voice known. And she was great. The woman who played Noelle Dubois. She was really good. She was a big fan favorite team.
What are your kids? How old are your kids? Are they pretty little, or do they know?
Oh yeah, my kids are 4 and 7.
Oh,
and I try to get my daughter who's 7 to see like Iron Man or Thor and some of the stuff I've worked on, and no interests. But my boy, when he gets older, he'll be totally into it. He's I'm warping his brain already with Nintendo. So you know, he's gonna see when he turns 5, he's gonna get to see Star Wars. Because I want to see Star Wars before Avengers, because I know he's gonna break Daddy's heart for Avengers.
Oh yeah.
I mean, all the things they can do, there's no way he's not gonna prefer Avengers. So
yeah,
I'm gonna show him Star Wars first.
I mean, movies these days are just crazy to me, how cool the special effects, everything, you know, it's just amazing. Like how far they've even come since I was a kid, you know, they're just
oh yeah.
So
well, I mean, it's
crazy.
getting to the point now where, I mean, the special effects that you can do on a streaming service it can stand up to, you know, some of the big movies, you know. I just did a movie that just came out on Netflix. I did during COVID, actually. It just came out on Netflix called Thunder Force with Melissa McCarthy. And we did, you know, there weren't a lot of visual effects, but the ones that we did, you know, they came out quite good. And, you know, there's probably for much smaller budget than if I'm working on like Men in Black or something. And I remember when I was starting out, I mean, I worked on some movies where they had to cut whole scenes because of budgets, because of how expensive some of the visual effects were. Like I did a movie called Van Helsing, and I guess somehow my storyboards got online back a few years ago because some people started writing articles about it that I don't even remember releasing them. So I don't know if maybe my agent put them up. But there was originally a whole sequence with Creatures from the Black Lagoon in that movie. And, but in the script, it just said the Frankenstein, actually he called him Frankenstein instead of Frankenstein's monster because the director didn't know as much about that stuff. But Frankenstein's monster fights creatures from the Black Lagoon. And that was it. That was the whole sentence. So he said, oh, just so see what you can go do with this. So I drew up this gigantic, epic battle between Frankenstein's monster, creatures from Black Lagoon. I mean, it was wild. At one point, I had Frankenstein's monster ripping off creature's arms, and then the creature starts growing new arms, and then Frankenstein's monster starts beating him with his arms. And it was like I really went all out in this fight. And the director liked it, and he took it to Universal, and they cut the entire sequence because mine was so expensive. Just my drawings looked so expensive, and then they cut the whole scene from the movie. I was really, it was great because that was probably the first time where I ever had a director say to me, you go nuts and see what you can come up with. Everybody liked it. I thought, oh wow, this is gonna be the best thing ever. And, oh well. Cut.
Do they have like awards for storyboard? You know, they have awards for every movie
they
thing
don't have
that.
anything like
Oh,
that.
well, that's dumb. They should have.
No,
that.
sometimes you don't even get screen credit. Van Helsing, I did for 5 or 6 months. I didn't get screen credit on that. I mean, it's on
That's a
IMDb
bummer.
or whatever. Yeah. You get over that kind of thing. I do remember back then, because I was much younger and that stuff meant more to me. That I was like, oh, I remember being quite hurt. I remember being with the girl I was dating at the time, and that really bothered me. But at 49, they pay well. It was good experience, and you move on to the next film, the next project.
I mean, do you kind of look at yourself and where you've come and everything and what you've all done and think, I'm like living my dream kind of? I mean, you sounds to me like you are. If that's kind of like
yeah, I mean, I've had those moments, but I think everybody watching this would understand that you get to a certain point when you get married and you have kids, your priorities change. And so, the things that were a big part of my identity before are still a part of my identity, but they're not as important to me. It's not like I would look back in my life and say, I did Thor, it was cool and it was fun and I'm glad I worked on it. And it's funny, I actually had more Asgardian weapons that I designed in the second Thor movie, which I didn't even work on, but they'd already designed them. So I guess they just brought them over the second one, because I remember being in the theater going, I remember that. And so, but yeah, I don't know. It's funny though, I think I joked about this on Facebook that I was reading my bio online or something. I was like, I sound really impressive in 3 sentences. I think we would all sound fantastic if we could just put all of our life accomplishments into 3 sentences. We would all sound like superstars,
Sure,
so. But life is really a lot longer, a lot messier. And, at some point, yes, I was living my dream working on all these things. And now I'm living my dream with my novel, which is my main focus. Because I'd like to get away from creating other people's visions and trying to focus on my own. And I've been lucky that I've get some good reviews and some stuff. So, we'll see. But that is my goal, is to, transition over the next 5 years into doing my own vision instead of being a work for hire and helping other people realize their vision. That makes sense.
So you said the ship is going to be a trilogy. Is that what you were saying?
That's the goal. I mean, it's
okay.
a standalone book. It has a beginning, middle, and end. It has a big twist ending. And it's funny, it's not really a twist ending, because it was the first idea that I had, was that ending. And then I built it up from there. But I have had everybody who's read it so far be like, oh, I didn't see that ending coming. I'm like, well, that was their favorite part. They were like, I was like, well, because that was the kernel that I had, that I retroactively figured out, well, how do you get to this ending?
But do you have the idea of where you want to go with it from here for the other 2?
I do. I have a basic 3-act structure of them. But the idea is that the second and third one would not be as standalone as the first one. Just like they did with the Star Wars trilogy. The first one has a beginning, middle, and end. Right. You can walk away from the first Star Wars and be fine. Or you can go to the second one, which has a cliffhanger. So the second one will. But that's a year away. I'm really in the early development stages of it now. I've got like 30 pages somewhere and I've got some notes. So
have you always mostly been into like sci-fi type scary movies, or do you like any of the other kinds of like slasher movies, or do you get into watching true crime things or anything like that too?
I mean, I don't watch slasher movies. The only film I've ever turned down in my entire career was 3 or something. I refuse to work on that one. I don't want that stuff in my head. So, yeah, no, I mean, I'm not like a horror guy. I mean, The Exorcist is brilliant and Thing was great. If it's great, it's great,
right.
But I'm not a horror guy. I put some horrific moments in my book just because I'm trying to build tension and you use some cheap tricks and stuff to try to get the reader, like, let's go around the next corner. And horror is very good at doing that. So I definitely look at horror writers for that, Stephen King and stuff like that. X-Files, but I like X-Files. I wouldn't know if I would call that horror, even though it had horror elements. Science fiction, I like concepts and ideas, and I'm using the ship because you hear all this stuff about UFOs and the gray aliens. Like, why do they always look like that? And this and that. So I had a theory, and I decided to wrap it all up and try to answer everything. Answer Area 51, answer the Roswell thing, answer the little gray man, the UFOs, all of that, and try to do it in something that was scientifically sound, that actually could make sense, could have happened, could happen, and could explain all that stuff. So that's what I was saying about twisting it. It's like you take the tropes and all the stuff you know from the 80s and 90s, draw the people in and be like, hey, you're missing X-Files, come on in, we got a safe place for you. Stephen King's not writing anything today, come on in, I got a safe place for you. And then you flip the whole thing on the second half. You're like, oh wait, I didn't see that coming. So
Have
that's the goal.
Have you watched that? I think it's on the History Channel. That is it Skinwalker Ranch? Is that what it is?
Ooh, no. What a
it's-
title.
Is that what it's called? I should look it up quick. But it's all about I'm probably not saying, I don't remember. It's something Walker Ranch out in Utah, where they have all this, studying going on of UFO stuff and everything. It's like it's real. It's not like a fictional story.
Oh, okay.
No,
I
so
haven't-
these
I
guys
haven't
are
seen it.
there doing all these studies, and I don't know if it was
No,
owned
I
by
mean,
the
it's funny that
government at
suddenly
one
everybody's
point,
got
but
into a UFO craze. When I was writing this
Yeah.
a year ago or 2 years ago, especially even during COVID a year ago, nobody was talking about UFOs. I was just like, hey, I wanted to write something because I love the X-Files and I have my own theory as to what these aliens are, where they come from, and what they want. And I just wrote it, and it just happened. Literally, the book dropped the same month as the Congress or whatever is. I mean, the idea that Congress is looking for intelligent life is just a joke unto itself. But the idea that Congress is doing these hearings about UFOs suddenly in the same month that my book comes out is a weird coincidence. But no,
Yeah.
I haven't been watching any of those shows. My big influence was the stuff that I grew up with.
yeah, it is called Skinwalker Ranch. I had to look it up quick. So yeah, I was watching a couple of them the other night. They're kind of interesting. I don't know if you caught, we did a Meet the Creep night a couple weeks ago with Chad Lewis. He's written a bunch of books and he's like a paranormal researcher, and
I saw a little bit of that. You
yeah.
had it on Facebook. That's not what I do watch.
Yeah, there's and he has some on like UFOs, and he's talked to a lot of people and stuff that have been seen UFOs or whatever. But one of the members of our group that was in the Zoom with us, it was interesting. He actually, he says he had an experience, like he was being followed, he thought, kind of by UFOs, and then he like had a encounter with an alien. And it's kind of a cool story. You might want to go back and look at that once. It's kind of interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you suggest? Like, there's a lot of artists in our group, and if people are kind of thinking, well, maybe they want to get more into illustration or cartoon, or comic book drawing, stuff like that, like, or even something like you do, what would you suggest, like, as far as
Depends on what their skill level is and where they're at. If they're still working on their anatomy and composition, things like that, the single best book that I give, and I've given this to older people, I've given this to younger people. There's a book called How to Draw the Marvel Way by Stan Lee and John Romita, I think, from the 70s. It's still in print, and there's a reason it's still in print. It is one of the hands down best books I've ever seen on art. It will teach you everything you need to know about composition and making an exciting image and telling a story with that image. What other piece of advice would I give? I'd say find your niche, whichever one it is.
I know, I never know.
Everybody's good at something. I'm very good at being able to draw really fast. Like, I can draw 7 or 8 fully finished drawings in an hour if I had to. Everybody's got their own, what their strength is, and figure out what you're good at, and then just hone in on that. And there's if you're really beautiful, fully rendered art, there's definitely a sales for that. If you're a quick sketch artist, there's definitely a sale for that, because productions do not have the time for the pretty art stuff. They move it along, like, give me some stuff to shoot. And if you want to get into film, though, look at a book called Shot by Shot. It's got a blue cover. It's the be all end all. It got storyboards from all the way back from Hitchcock's day. And it's a very old book, but techniques have not changed. They've been modernized and everything's being done on one of these antiques right here instead of pieces of paper and pen, but the techniques are exactly the same. Camera direction is basically the same. You'll learn about size ratios, you'll learn all that. So shot by shot, if you want to get into filmmaking, storyboarding, concept art, anything like that. If you're a more beginning artist, how to draw them more of a way is good. There's another artist, if you want to work on drawing women, called Loomis, that I've given to many of my students because I've had some art students over the years. Loomis is, I think his name is Andrew Loomis, but I'm not positive on that. And he's great for that. You know.
Do you think that people have to go to school or college, or if they just have a natural talent and they, you know, can they get to a point like working in films, do you think, or is like the college experience not really necessary? Or
I've never, ever had a job asking me, so what's your education? You know, that's, no, I'm not, I have a college education. I want my kids to have a college education, but if you're trying to get into the film industry, nobody cares. They care about whether or not you're able to, you know,
your talent,
draw well, and whether or not you can convey a story and understand camera. That's where a lot of storyboard artists run into trouble, is they think, oh, I'm just drawing a comic book. It's not a comic book. You can't do things like crossing the line. You have to learn what crossing the line means. And you have to know basic camera direction, and then work up a portfolio. But no, if you're good, just submit it to people. Somebody will notice. Great thing about art is it's the easiest thing to get hired on because it's the fastest thing. Writing takes time. They have to read your stuff. Acting is tough because unless you're got a script and you're doing a scene in front of a director, I mean, you know, maybe you're a pretty face, but that's about it. But art, bam, a person knows, yes, I'll hire this person. No, I won't. They're not ready. That's it. And that's a great barometer for where you are.
have you ever acted in anything or wanted to act in anything?
No. I mean, I think I have a walk-on line in Forbidden Science. I can't remember what it was. I did have a walk-on line. I was supposed to have a big scene, and then I chickened out the day of, and I gave it to the producer. So I'm like, I can't do this. I can't do it. I can't do it. And production had to stop for a little while the producer learned the line so he could take my place. But then there was another scene where it was just like a guard or something, and I had one line, and so I threw that out. But no. Oh, and when I was first starting out, I was a PA for Playboy. And there was a scene where I'm like supposed to be like filming this love scene or something, and they have a close-up of me looking through the camera. I'm like, ooh, like that. And so that was it. And a truly disturbing story that I'd forgotten up until now is I remember I did not tell my dad I was working for Playboy, and he called me one night and he said, I just have something you need to tell me. I'm like, what? He's like, I just saw you in a Playboy movie. And now looking, you have to understand the last thing you want to hear from your father is that he just saw you in a Playboy movie, because it just means the guy was watching a Playboy movie. So,
yeah,
I'm not
sure what part of it is worse in my head.
Right.
That he discovered it, or that he's watching
it. Yeah, it was 1999. I remember I was a PA and I was on this job, and yeah. And it was not nearly as much fun as all my buddies thought it would be. They're all like, "Oh, wow, that must be such a fun job."
Sure. Yeah.
No, it was more of a turn off than anything else. It was not at all.
Julie or Shannon, I don't know if you guys have any questions or anything, but we'll probably.
Do you have a storyboard that you could share with us?
Sure. Let's see. Is there a way to do share screen on here?
I can. Yeah.
Yeah. Hold on. I can bring stuff up.
Let's see.
You got all my samples.
Yeah, I'm your age. I was a big Star Wars fan growing up, and I remember seeing all the storyboards from Star Wars. And
oh yeah, well that was I can't remember his name right now. He's a very famous artist who did those. Johnson.
Oh, okay. All participants who can start sharing.
Oh, here we go.
Okay. So hopefully that.
Share screen.
Now, if you share screen, I think it'll do it.
Let me see. Okay. Yeah. Hold on 1 sec. All right. Let's see. Oh yeah. Okay. All right. So no. There we go.
There it's
Can you see my screen?
oh yeah.
Okay, so let's see, what do we got? So this is that's Men in Black. Let me get to where I can actual knit and gritty. Okay, so like these are done really fast, and what they would do is this is done for animatics. So you draw these out super rough, super loose, but it's telling you the camera's going into this courtyard, it's coming around, it's finding this alien guy with a fez hat. He looks up to the camera, and this is all one shot. That's why it says 1B, 1C, 1D, 1E. He says his line, 1F. So now the camera's panned over off of him onto the low angle of these two guys standing there. And now we finally cut at 2A to a new shot. The idea with the scene was that we were going really long camera takes. It's very rare to do something like this. Like this camera goes way up high, looking down at them, and then we cut. Let me see if I can find something a little more exciting. But this,
So like
that
if
gives
you
an
have
idea.
like that arrow where it says camera, so then does that mean the camera's gonna pan that way, or does that mean that's just showing
Yeah,
the angle
yeah,
the
exactly.
camera's at, or okay?
No, that means like this one means the camera's coming in, so it's pushing in. Now we're tracking with this guy's, and then
The
this
guy looks like
means
George
the
Washington, by the way.
Really?
The guy in the back seat.
Oh, really? Yeah, they're like alien guys or something. And yeah, so like yeah, the camera, you have just like this one was a lot of like camera push-ins, you know. This is like a big visual effect thing where the car is being brought up on the ground is ripping up, and the car is being tossed into this building. And the idea was they were trying to do this all in one shot. So A 8A, 8B, 8C.
Wow.
And then you're cranking these out at 5 an hour. So I mean, these are done really fast. Like so that's why you keep them kind of loosey goosey, you know, and you try to just, it has to be just clear enough that anybody can look at this and understand what's going on.
Mhm.
You know, it's what I call the 12-year-old rule. If a 12-year-old can look at this shot and say, okay, he's got a gun, he's pointing the gun, 12-year-old will understand that. They're using their powers to deflect the bullets, you know, things like that. And then let's see, where's wait.
What movie was that one you were just showing?
That was Men in Black
Oh,
International.
okay.
Oh, actually, let's see, where's the whole pet cemetery? Oh, that was Men in Black International. No, I just heard myself.
Yeah, that was.
And these were the boards that we used for Chris Hemsworth. Actually, these were some of the more detailed things that we used to try to sell him on ideas of what, you know. And you're just trying to sell an idea. You're just trying to, but you can see that these are more detailed, you know. So these are done more at like 2 or 3 an hour instead of like 5 or 6 an hour. And then you have things like, oh, there's my puppy dog chow commercial or something I just must have done recently. Commercial work comes in, the commercial work, you know, that's in between the movies that definitely pays the bills. Oh, there was some sort of gnome movie, Sherlock Gnome.
Oh yeah.
Which I don't really have much experience with animation, but they brought me in for that one. And, oh, here it is. So this was Pet Semetary, and this was actually, they showed me a rough cut of the movie, and then they were gonna, which was cool because they like put me in this screening room and everything, and gave me the 4-star treatment. I got to just sit there and watch the movie, and you know, the movie was what it was. And then I went in, I met with the 2 directors, and we talked through the scene, and they definitely knew their shots pretty well, but there was some room for, you know, movement, and these are done at 3 an hour. And so this is like, you know, they did this, and you have to be very specific on these shots because then they're going to shoot it, you know. So this one I do remember having quite a bit of freedom with some of the fight and the struggle of what I was going to do. And this is, you know, these are 3 an hour, maybe 4 on some of the loosey goosier ones.
And this was, you had said, like the remake of Pet Cemetery. So
this is
like
the,
a year or 2 ago.
I'm not old enough to have storyboarded the original. I'm not that old. I'm up there. I'm not that old.
Yeah,
but this was really cool for me. I'm a huge Stephen King fan, and even though it's not maybe as true to the book as it could have been. It was still nice to, to take that out of my checklist and say, oh,
Right.
okay, I did a Stephen King movie. So
Great. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that.
yeah, sure.
There's a member in our group, and Lisa, if you're listening, I don't know if her last name is G or Gee, but it's Gee. And she's a prop maker at Vancouver Film and Television.
Oh, okay. Then she knows exactly what I.
And so she just mentioned that I worked on the APRS movies,
APR.
or unless she meant to
Apes
say
movies.
What is it?
She mean the apes? I don't know what APRS movies is. Maybe
I'm wondering if she
APRS?
spelled. I'm wondering if
She
she
mean
spelled
apes?
something wrong.
She
what
might
I
have
mean?
meant the Apes movies. I mean,
Maybe.
I did the Tim Burton one, but then she probably worked on the good ones. That's harsh. I shouldn't say that, but yeah, she worked on the better ones. It's
How
funny
did
because
you
Maze
like,
Runner and one of, huh?
I was gonna say, how do you like Tim Burton?
He was a really he was not as personable as most directors I've worked with, and I didn't know much about directors at the time, so I just thought they were all like that, very kind of like I'm the artist and this and that, and most are not. So he's definitely stood out. I had one conversation with him, and I asked him, I'm a big Prince fan, and Prince did the soundtrack to Batman. So I asked him, what was it like working with Prince? And he was like, is he a hero of yours? I'm a big fan. He's like, don't work with heroes. So I assume they got along. He said it with a tongue in cheek, so I'm sure, they got along okay, but you definitely got the vibe from him that there were a lot of stories back there about with the Batman stuff. And I did ask him about his Superman movie, and he seemed a little bummed that he didn't get to finish that, because everybody who was working on Planet of the Apes had spent the last 4 years or something like that before Apes working on the Superman movie that never got made with Nicolas Cage. So all the artists that I was working with had done that, and that was only my second film. I had done, it was a big step up for me on that movie, because I did House on a Hill, and then I did Apes. And that was my first big AAA film. That was my first film where my dad knew the director I was working with, and or working for. I didn't really. It's not like most of my jobs where later in life I had very one-on-one contact with the director. I only had one conversation or two conversations with Tim Burton, and they were not that but most 99% of the directors I worked with, like Ryan Johnson, who is extremely talented, and JJ and all those, they're very nice. You have a lot of conversations when you're a storyboard artist with the director, because you're helping them create their vision. Right. And it's a very intimate kind of relationship. So that's why I never say, oh, well, this scene was my idea, or this shot was my idea. I would never do that. Because they're trusting that we work together, we figure it out, so that director can go on and be the director and say, this is my vision, these are the shots that I've created, and so on.
Since you're a Prince fan, I'll just mention, when Prince died, we're in Wisconsin, so it's close. So we went to Paisley Park that weekend, right after he died. And then, so they had like all the fences were covered in, fan stuff. And then we went downtown, stayed downtown that night. And so there was like outside First Avenue, these big parties kind of, in the streets and everything. It was pretty cool. And then we went back there like the next year for the tour of Paisley Park. So
I'm dying to do that. That's the one thing I really want to do. It's hard when you have family and kids.
I mean, I'm sure you would anyway, but do the VIP. We did the VIP.
Oh yeah. It's only a few dollars more. Absolutely. If you spend the money to fly there and stay over, you're definitely gonna
you have to.
VIP tour.
And when we were at,
I would like to do. I'd like to do that and Graceland. I'd like to just knock them both off.
Oh, Graceland is amazing.
I would imagine.
Loved it.
The only person more flamboyant than Prince would be Elvis Presley.
Graceland is over the top tacky, definitely.
Yeah,
but I loved it.
Yeah,
big Elvis fan. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
And then when we went to Paisley Park the first time that week he died, we were standing around outside looking at all the stuff, and And then like his family and stuff were there, because this was like just a few days later, and they came out, like Sheila E. and like his Princess sister and that Judith Hill and all these people. They came out and like stood around amongst us talking to people and gave out a bunch of gifts and everything like that. So it was pretty cool for sure.
I had 2 opportunities to meet him and I didn't try either time. He walked by me twice and I could have said hi or something. I didn't. Because, you know, sometimes you don't always need to meet your heroes, you know. Sometimes it's better let them be. And you know, I remember I got a call for reshoots for Attack of the Clones, and I was really young in storyboarding at that time, and I was not ready for it. I knew I wasn't ready for it, and I kind of chickened out. I did send some stuff, but I sent it like a little late, and I'm okay with that. I wouldn't want to have screwed up working for George Lucas. Like today, I'd have no problem with it because I've worked for so many people. But back then, you know, wouldn't have been ready for that, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Oh, and then that reminded me too, speaking of Graceland, we had a Meet the Creep night a month or 2 ago. We have quite a few miniature artists in the group that do like dollhouses.
You have some amazing miniature artists. I saw somewhere on your site who made
Yes.
this house out of popsicle sticks or something. It was the first thing I thought was somebody in Hollywood needs to see this because you would absolutely use that for a horror movie. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing.
I
stuff.
mean,
They
once
need agents. They need to get repped.
yeah. Last fall, I just had made my daughter's old dollhouse into a creepy, you know, haunted dollhouse. And that was the first time I ever tried it. And it was so fun. And then I started searching around out there, and there's so many incredible miniature artists out there. And we have quite a few really good ones in our group. But there's also one that I follow online called Tiny Graceland on Instagram. And she's making a complete replica of Graceland, all in miniature. She's making every little piece of furniture, like those peacock windows, every little portrait on the wall. Everything is exactly how Graceland is. It is bonkers. It's so cool.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's really good.
Okay, I'm not that big of a fan. Like I'm a fan. I've got like a big vinyl collection down here.
Oh, there you go.
This is all Elvis, but yeah, I'm not okay. I'm not building things in shrines for him or anything, but I am a fan.
Right.
He's one of my favorites.
I just thought it was like just amazing that she could do all that.
That's incredible. I cannot do any 3D artwork. That's a very different mindset. Doing 2D work and 3D work.
Yeah.
Whole different world.
Mm-hmm. I like to do like a lot of photo composites and stuff like that, digital art stuff.
Oh yeah.
Lately, the past few years, I've gotten into that more. So
you could always get into book covers. I mean, this is basically photo comp. You know, it's basic. I mean, she's manipulating it. She's painting it. She's an artist named Thea from Europe, and but she's sourcing materials and then she's just adding to it with paint. So I mean, you could certainly get in something like that. I would imagine.
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Open field out there. There's always somebody needing a book cover.
Yeah. Well, very cool. We're over an hour already, so I guess we'll wrap it up. But I'm really glad you came on to do this. This was really cool and super interesting. And I mean, I think there's a ton of people that'll be wanting to hear all about it. They'll probably either watch the replay or have been watching it on live or whatever. But thank you so much for doing this for us.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah,
and I hope everybody will check out The Ship by Doug Brode on Amazon.
And
helping you write her out.
That's right.
Actually, you can get it for free on that. You can get this thing called KDP or something. This thing on Amazon where the Kindle Unlimited, where you can just, it's like Netflix for books. So like actually, if you give a Kindle Unlimited, you can just pick it up for free. Otherwise, it's $4.99 for the Kindle. Help a new writer out.
And I will go on and put a link to your publishing page on the group too, and then they can go on there and there's some chapter samples on there.
There are
that we had talked about. So
and they're not just the beginning. I got 2 from the beginning, and then I got the flashback ones that you were discussing
Yeah.
children.
So I'll put that link up on the page, and then they can always go check it out there too a little bit and
That's nice of you. Thank
get
you.
a feel for it and everything. So, all righty. Well, thanks very
Thank you.
much. And
Appreciate it.
let us know, if you start getting anything else towards, being published or anything, or links to anything or whatever.
Yeah, I'm probably. Well, the audiobook comes out next month, which I'm very.
Oh,
excited
okay.
for. That I'm really excited for. So I'll let you know when that drops. That should be like.
So
July
who will
15th.
be reading it?
This guy Zachary. It was crazy. Because I'm an unknown. I didn't think that I would get like a lot of auditions, and I got a whole bunch of auditions. So I was able to choose. And some were really funny. Like I didn't realize like what I didn't want until I really heard. I was like, okay, no, that's bad. But then I found one guy who's fantastic, and so his name is Zachary. I don't remember his last name, and he is going to be recording it at the end of the month, and then it goes through the mastering process at the beginning of the month. And so we launched the book on June 11th, so we're hoping to launch the audiobook on July 11th.
Okay.
Give it a little symmetry, but we'll see. That's the goal. It could be a July 15th. It'll definitely be right in the middle of July. So like my wife would prefer the audiobook. She did read the book, but my wife's not a big one for sitting around like reading a lot. So she'd rather get the audiobook.
Yeah.
I'll wait for the audiobook. I like to listen. I got a long commute, so I listen to books in my car.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that'd be awesome. Yeah, that'll be up in a month.
Right?
Some good summer reading. People can get out there and get a copy to take to the beach or something.
Yeah, I definitely have my own unique take on what those aliens are.
Yeah. All righty. Well, thanks again. And
All right, thank
everybody have a good night, and we'll
Thank
talk to
you.
you again. Bye.
Bye.